week of the NFL preseason. It is opening line report. Dan Alexander alongside Teddy Covers. And Teddy, this week is unlike any other, I'll say, because I'm looking at the odds logic screen, and usually it's all lighting up. There's action happening as we head into week 3, and we'll recap week 2. Hit that like button and subscribe. A little bit different that I'm seeing on my odds board. Teddy, what's going on?
So we do have, so somebody just posted. FanDuel just posted like 5 minutes ago. So at least we have some books that posted because the screen was dead blank a little while ago. I'm seeing DK. I'm seeing a couple numbers offshore right now. So we're starting to see the semblance of a market. But week 3, given what happened in week 2, it's very difficult to come up with points. I was sitting there going last night, I was like, let's make numbers. And I'm like, I don't know what to make this number. This team -3, that team -3. I have no idea what the rotations are going to be. So there were at least half the games. I'm like, I don't know where to price this. The books are having the same problem. And that's why we didn't see any overnight numbers. They don't know how to price a lot of these games. So we would expect to see significant line moves once information gets released as to who's going to play, who's not going to play, and what the rotations are going to be and what the rotations aren't going to be. So that's information that, again, we don't have necessarily at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time on Monday morning, but the show goes live, man. Whether we have the info or not, we'll give out everything that we got.
All right, Teddy. Well, before we start getting into these lines that, again, they're fresh. So, folks, maybe we'll have some EBAs, but without a market, it may be tough. So, emergency betting alerts on today's show may be light, but don't worry. In 2 weeks, we're doing a proper NFL opening line report for NFL Week 1. So hyped that it is here already. But, Teddy, before we do that, felt like week 2 was a lot less competitive. Week 1, we talked about, these barking dogs. Look at totals this way and that way. A lot of blowouts across the NFL preseason in week 2, Teddy.
Which is something we don't normally see in the preseason. We really don't. But 11 of the 16 games were decided by double-digit margins. Some favorites, some dogs. But a lot of blowouts, a lot of non-competitive games after halftime. 8 overs, 8 unders, nothing doing total-wise this past weekend. There was one bad beat to speak of, the Raiders /over. Well, that was a tough beat for Texans bettors and unders. I think Texans dominated that game early, but didn't have a whole lot of edges in the second half. But the Raiders with one long scoring drive to win the game and send the game over late. Aiden O'Connell behind center. The biggest line, but the interesting thing about the markets not putting up numbers is that basically the biggest line moves lost all weekend. Everything, the Broncos versus the Packers, that was wrong. Lions versus Commanders, that line move was wrong. KC versus Tampa, that line move was wrong. Tennessee bet up against Seattle, that landed in the middle, but landing on 3 better for the books and landing on 4 closed, 4.5 at a lot of places. That another good result for the house. So when the money comes in, the markets are betting player rotations. They're saying this coach is playing starters, this coach is playing backups, this coach doesn't care, this coach is interested in winning. That's what moves the markets. And what we've seen in 2026 is the coach is saying that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. That's why a lot of these games have been very good for the house, not so good for the wise guys.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense over here, Teddy. All right, Teddy, let's get into week 3 again, folks. We have a limited availability of odds here. I'll zoom in so you can see here on the Odds Logic live odds screen. These are fresh, like Teddy said, posted right before we were coming on air. We'll start off here with the Steelers taking on the Buffalo Bills. Aller had at least one deep throw on a broken play downfield, so still some Aller mania, but seemed like the super excitement, Teddy, came crashing down a little bit in preseason week 2, which was something you said, hey, maybe let's pump the brakes here a little bit. How do you see this one shaking out?
And the funny thing is, I talked about it on WagerTalk today on Friday, I think it was. We broke down the Steelers, and I'm like, look, Drew Aller's not the second coming. He said he came in the second half against a team that wasn't blitzing, and his receivers made plays. And boy, man, and some of the comments, I got ripped. They hated me for saying that. I'm like, it's week 1 of the preseason. Tap the brakes a little bit. That's certainly the case for Drew Aller and company. So as you mentioned, let's just give the numbers at the top. I'm seeing Buffalo 1.5, total 35.5. You want to talk a team that's looked good in the preseason? The Buffalo Bills have looked really good in the preseason. Again, they sat. So with Brown starters against Bills second and third stringers, didn't matter. The preseason depth has been impressive. They killed Carolina. They killed Cleveland. In the second half, the Bills' third stringers were better than those teams, throughout the game. The Bills' depth has been impressive. I mean, they really didn't play at all against Cleveland starters-wise. Now, Kyle Allen, Shane Buechele, one would assume we're going to see more of that duo here. Josh Allen is not likely to play in the finale, but stranger things have happened. But what we're seeing, the quotes, the Bills decided to sit everyone after Thursday's joint practice with the Browns. And we saw Joe Brady comfortable with what the first stringers had been able to put together. And then he said, all right, we're going to sit everyone. So some of that info likely to come later in the week. For Pittsburgh, they got shut out. Worth noting, Mason Rudolph didn't play. It was Will Howard and Drew Aller. We talked about Aller not doing that well. I thought Will Howard played well. He threw 2 picks, and the quotes after the game, the stuff I was seeing after the game was people saying, Will Howard, oh, that guy. And I'm like, Will Howard was firing the ball downfield. He was taking shots. I thought, one of the interceptions wasn't his fault. The other one was. But when you have a QB who's taking shots in preseason, in my mind, that's a lot better than a QB that's dinking and dunking down the field on every play. So I thought there was positive things from Howard. Howard's quote, we can't let this trip us up going forward. We have to continue to make strides, and we didn't really make any strides tonight. From a motivational standpoint, probably more here for Pittsburgh than Buffalo, but motivation doesn't move lines here in the preseason.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, Teddy, it's apropos segue as we head in here to game 2 of Thursday's board, because you mentioned Cleveland, you can play their starters against second string. Hasn't looked great for Cleveland here in the preseason. New England, they get the backdoor win and cover outright as dogs in that end of the game against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now we're seeing them 1.5, 34.5. And again, folks, we're just looking at one line here as these are pretty fresh.
Yeah. So Tommy DeVito and then Baron Morton for the Patriots, and that was good for 24 points. This past week. And Morton was the guy. Morton was the 7th round draft choice. Punted, led the game-winning drive. DeVito started each of the first 2 weeks. I would not be surprised if we see him again here. His quote, for sure, I feel comfortable. Just being able to get comfortable with the guys and everyone around me, putting our best feet forward. And again, projected starters for both teams sat out in the Patriots win over the Colts. I would expect more of the same here. As for Cleveland, we've seen this morning, and I said this on I think I said it on WagerTalk today. I don't remember where I said it, but I was like, Deshaun Watson's going to win this job, and he did. All right, Shedeur Sanders did not do enough to win the QB job. Now, Watson said some stupid stuff after the game. Todd Monken is in a hell of a spot in Cleveland, and things don't feel right. And, of course, the Browns, again, who were playing starters, and they've been outscored by 48 points in 2 preseason games. Worst in the NFL. So, Todd Monken talking about the quarterback competition. I'm jacked with how we did it. Some other people might not see it that way, but in order to make an educated decision, we needed to see them both practice and play. That's just part of it. It's not the easiest or most ideal, but it gives us the best opportunity because ultimately that's what matters. All right. Good luck with that. You can feel the writing on the wall for Cleveland already. Monken, he's up against it. The fans are already the unrest is already there, and certainly we talk about a home field advantage. Note that the Browns are home dogs here. I'm not convinced there's a whole lot of home field edge for Cleveland in Cleveland these days.
All right, Teddy, one of those teams we talked about all the blowouts last week. It started the week off when the San Francisco 49ers just absolutely mollywop the Chargers. They're taking on should be a decent game here as they're taking on Las Vegas. Mendoza likely seeing some more action in this one. Again, 1.5. Third game, third 1.5 that we're seeing, 38.5 the total on this one. And
what's that? Well, this is telling us that the market, I don't know, put above 1.5. Yep. It's not going to be a field. 2.5 is too much for a home field. Basically what the market is pricing, pick them. And here's that 1.5 for home field edge. The one difference is Cleveland doesn't have any home field edge. So the markets are going that way. That's not going to be that way for every game. There'll be money against the Rams. And I'll talk about the Rams in a minute. Let's stay with San Fran and Vegas. San Fran was Brock Purdy and then Mac Jones and Adrian Martinez. They killed him. It was 41-17. It wasn't that close. The punt return touchdown blew the game open, but San Fran played with a different level of motivation than the Chargers did in that contest, and it showed on the field. Brock Purdy, quote, getting back some playing time. I thought it was good, just doing the break in the huddle, calling plays, feeling the pocket, getting hit, throwing the ball. Lots of positive things for the 49ers. Nothing to prove here for San Francisco. I don't think we'll see the starters again this preseason. The Raiders have had issues. Their secondary's been bad. They got lit up by Jacoby Brissett. They got lit up by Gardner Minshew. They got lit up by Davis Mills. This is a problem for the Raiders because the pass rush isn't strong enough and the secondary isn't very good. Obviously, Fernando Mendoza played the first half, 8 of 15, 86 yards, did lead one positive drive. His quotes, I came away with there's a lot more learning to do. And although maybe you say you had a lot of success at another level, this level is a whole step further, and the margin is so small, one tiny mistake can lead to catastrophe. That was his pick six. Obviously, Mendoza. The throw before the pick six was great, and then the pick six was a nightmare. We would expect Kirk Cousins to start in week 1 of the regular season. We don't know who's going to go here. Could be a lot of Aiden O'Connell in this ballgame. O'Connell, of course, rallied the Raiders from behind to win the ballgame. But player rotations here are going to matter for Las Vegas. Frankly, I have no idea who the Raiders are planning on suiting up. Niners, not that much urgency, but Shanahan's track record in August has been pretty good. He's been winning 2 out of 3 in recent seasons, and they're 1-1 so far this year. So I don't know that San Fran, the San Fran backups and third stringers have been pretty good this August for what it's worth.
Final game for Thursday, August 27th. It's the Battle of LA. Before we talk this game, folks, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe, but make sure you drop a comment because next week, obviously no games. We're gearing up for the regular season. You can drop your comments here in the comments section or comment live on next week's show, and we'll basically do a lot of mailbag stuff. So you have questions for a guy who's been grinding this out since how many years in Vegas, Teddy? How many years you been doing this?
So I moved out here for preseason in 1990. I believe it was August 6, 1998. It was my first day in town. The Hall of Fame game was that night or the next night. I don't remember. Yeah. 98, my first year. And I came out to bet the NFL. That was my right. Let's go.
So I get to ask my question to Teddy for 15 minutes before we go live. You want to ask your questions, drop them in the comments here. We'll do a little mailbag edition next week. But let's talk the Battle of L.A. Rams taking on Chargers, and now we see it. There it is, 3.5 for a team that, Teddy, correct me if I'm wrong. That was, we just talked about this Chargers, how they got blown out by the 49ers, but that offensive line not looking great, man. From starters all the way down on through backups. This is going to be a problem, and if it's going to be a problem, the team probably not to face is the Rams, who just rolled up on the Saints 34-0. How do you see this one shaking out? Surprised to see a 3.5, and that's my square take, Teddy.
Sure. So the Rams are such an interesting story because literally Sean McVay does not care. No. Sean McVay could care less. And what they do, they beat the Saints 34-0, which speaks a little bit about the Saints, but it also speaks to the ability of the backup quarterbacks. Stetson Bennett. All right, the 4th-round pick in 2023 has now been in the system for 4 years. He's looked really good. Threw for 181 yards and a couple of rushing touchdowns. The rookie, Ty Simpson, 8 of 12 for 73 yards in 3 series in the second half. They moved the football with Simpson behind center. McVay, I think Bennett's just getting better and better, part of its overall command. Thought he made some really good decisions. He got through some progressions. I love that he used his legs. Bennett's quote, "We did good things on offense, feel more comfortable out there." In years prior, they're constantly reminding me, especially in practice in the red zone, the throw's not there, then take off and run. I had that in my mind on the 2 scores. It was fun. It's always fun to win 34-0. I'm with you on that. That being said, the Rams don't care. Here's a quote from Jim Harbaugh after the disaster this past weekend. Quote, "We got outplayed and beat ourselves in all 3 phases. We have a lot of things to work on." They went 0-1 in the red zone. They allowed 4 touchdowns and 4 red zone tries. The offensive line got eaten alive. They went 2 of 14 on 3rd downs. Only had 8 first downs the whole game with Herbert and Lance and Ugalele playing. There appears to be more urgency for LA, and the Rams don't care, hence the 3.5 for this one.
All right, let's move it on to Friday, and this is the big slate. Last week, Saturday was the big slate that we were looking at. This week, most games going to be taking place on Friday, and top of the list here, we got Washington taking on Baltimore. We're seeing 2.5 here for the Ravens, who have had a pretty nice preseason here as well. 35.5 the total for Mittner's new digs. How are you looking to bet this one, Teddy?
So Baltimore goes with Tyler Huntley and Joe Fagnano and Austin Reed for the final drive. They won 13-3 against the Vikings this past weekend. Jesse Minter had the Ravens starters, although the second stringers came in. And in 2 preseason games, the Ravens have allowed a grand total of 10 points. The quote is from Keandre Jackson, backup safety. Quote, "We preach not having a drop-off on our back end or on the defense, so the ones hold us accountable. The 2s and 3s want to follow suit." Note this total 35.5 is on the low end and it's already juiced to the under. So for what it's worth, Baltimore's defense has been a difference maker so far this August. As the Commanders, they lost 17-13 to Detroit, and there were issues on the offensive line. Jaden Daniels came in, he got sacked, he threw an incompletion, and then he went out. And Dan Quinn, he said that Daniels only going to play 1 series no matter how long it went. That said, the offensive line right now is a problem for Washington. And when you have an offensive line issue in your last preseason game and you're facing a Ravens defense that's blowing everything up at the line of scrimmage, that could be a problem. For the Commanders, we saw Sam Hartman come in and then Ethan Kalamanis. And Kalamanis was okay, 11-14 for $1.62. Again, a lot of that was catch and run. But his quote, "It's great to put up some numbers, but it doesn't matter to me that much. I know I have a lot of work to do still." And again, for all the moving the football, they scored a defensive TD less than a minute in and then had 2 field goals the rest of the game. It's not like this offense was marching the ball up and down the field for Washington. Not surprised they're dogs here. I don't think we'll see many starters for either squad. But if you ask me which of these 2 team backups I trust more, it's Baltimore.
Well, Teddy, the clients will be happy to hear you talk about Carolina again after a nice win over the weekend. 5% big ticket winner on the Carolina Panthers for Teddy and the clients. Great one there. They're taking on Houston, who's going to be road chalk in this one, 36.5. We talked about offensive line woes, offensive line questions for the Chargers. Kind of feels like those same kind of questions could be asked of Houston here, whose offense needs to be taken a step forward this season for sure, since they have that stout defense. What do you think about this one, Teddy?
Yeah, I'm interested in the quarterback rotations here for the Texans. I mean, you talk about the offensive line issues, and again, they had guys shuttling in and out of the line. You had starters sitting. You had guys playing different position this past weekend. The guys that brought in as free agents to start ended up playing with the second unit, Smith and Teller. So it was, and that's what preseason is for, trying different combinations, et cetera, et cetera. Stroud led the Texans to a touchdown in his only series. Stroud and the offensive line in front of him were the Texan starters who played in the ballgame. But the issues for Houston as they blew that game to the Raiders was that Brett Rippon was going to come in the second half. And remember, they had injuries. Mills wasn't going to play. They had injuries behind him. They had other quarterbacks who they brought in and tried out, and then those guys weren't good enough. So they're like, okay, Rippon, he's a guy off the waiver wire. And he went 6 of 10 for 44 yards. They were scoreless after halftime. I'm not sure yet what the QB rotation looks like here. As for Carolina, thank you for the kudos. It was 5% big ticket. We like them when they're right, and that was a right side. The info pointed really strongly towards Carolina, and the markets didn't make a big adjustment for the Panthers. We saw Bryce Young, Kenny Pickett, Kyle Trask all play fairly well. But they were in control. They scored a touchdown on the first drive and were in control throughout. And when we like the right sides when those happen. Bryce Young after the game, for us as a team and identity, it was definitely a step in the right direction after a really ugly week 1 showing. You don't want to get too high, you don't want to get too low. Figure out how we can replicate the good. There's plenty of stuff to learn from. Dave Canales, quote, "I'm excited to see it come alive and more of the things we've been seeing in camp. Just wanted to translate in the game." So I'm not expecting to see Carolina starters here. And boy, for Houston, say what you want about the Texans, that defense is special. And like Baltimore, there's defensive depth for the Texans. That could be an issue for Carolina in the second half of this one. Oh, you're muted, buddy.
Yeah, it would help if you could hear me, right? The Atlanta Falcons take on the Miami Dolphins as we keep on rolling here. We're starting to see the Green Book throwing up some lines here as well, Teddy. So we're seeing 3, 2.5 here for Atlanta, 36.5 total in both of them. How do you see this one?
Yeah, boy, the Falcons were another team that I did not expect to see what I saw from Atlanta this past weekend at all. Unfortunately, it cost me a bet. But Cooper Rush, who was also the guy that just signed off the waiver wire, he came in and played against starters and second stringers in 10 of 11. Strand, the undrafted rookie out of Minnesota State Moorhead, 212 yards passing and 2 touchdowns, one of them rushing in the second half. It was Atlanta, who looked awful week 1, looked much better in week 2. That being said, this week, Michael Penix just got cleared to get back into practice. He's had 3 ACL surgeries. He tore his right ACL in college, and then he tore his left ACL last November. He'd only been doing 7-on-7s and OTAs and all that kind of stuff since OTAs in the spring, I should say. Now he's going to allow to be able to do 11-on-11. I'm not convinced we see him here, but we might see him. And the markets are saying, again, with Atlanta favored in this range, that we might. But obviously, even if we don't, we saw Rush and Strand play well this past weekend. Stefanski said, quote, "I will play starters in the 3rd and final preseason game." We don't know yet for how long. As for Miami, look, they had Cam Miller and then Mark Gronkowski, the rookie out of Iowa at QB. And they played like they had Cam Miller and Mark Gronkowski at quarterback. They lost 26-3. And again, the first drive of the preseason, Malik Willis, 14-play, 95-yard touchdown drive. And Miami's on. They grinded out first downs. It was nice. Since that first drive of the preseason, 19 drives, 1 field goal, 12 3-and-outs. Not pretty. And again, they're the youngest team in the NFL. It's all backups for Miami. So the youngest team with new systems and the backups are playing. It hasn't been pretty for the Dolphins at all so far. Again, they were outgained 390-102. Jeff Halfley, quote, "A lot of the guys who were playing, I liked how hard they played. The details just aren't good right now. These are important moments. I want to see who can step up and who we count on to get towards the final 53. So it's emergency for Miami, but boy, they really haven't been very good yet here in August.
Yeah, that is for sure. Will that continue into the regular season? Well, you're going to tune in every single week here on Opening Line Report to find out, baby. All right, we got a lot more games actually here left on Saturday, Teddy. Let's do Tampa Bay versus Jacksonville. Jacksonville was the other side of that rocking chair 5% winner. They're taking on the Bucs here, and Bucs, I mean, obviously it doesn't matter much for NFL preseason week 3, but questions. What do you do with Baker Mayfield moving forward here? Because you see I think it was CJ Stroud saying he wants like 70 million, something like that. That's the market for quarterbacks, folks. So major questions for what the Bucs are going to be doing moving forward. But as far as this game is concerned, Teddy, what do we think?
Well, let's see. Baker Mayfield got his feet wet and went 2 for 4 for 10 yards. And I was like, money pouring it on Tampa. The starters are going to play. All right, you got a guy going 2 for 4 for 10 yards. Knock yourself out, and that was the end of it. Starters played a couple of series. Jake Browning came in 9 of 12 for 84, but was sacked 3 times. But Jalen Daniels, the rookie, again in the second half, the rookie out of Kansas, 3 second-half scoring drives. And he looked pretty darn good in doing so. So the fact that Jalen Daniels has been successful, we'll expect in the second half of each of his first 2 preseason games, we're likely to see more of him here. As for Jacksonville, we went against them this past weekend. Again, Liam Cohen is now 1 win, 3 losses, 1 tie in 5 preseason games. And the 1 win came in a game where they were blown out and then outscored them 18-0 after halftime with Nick Mullins behind center. So this is a Coach Cohen who does not seem to care a lot, about winning games in August. That was part of the handicap for it, because Carolina did carry this past weekend. And again, we saw Nick Mullins and Carter Bradley. Carter Bradley was pretty rough. Joey Aguilar. Aguilar is pretty good, actually. 9 of 10 for a $130 and a touchdown. But no starters played. And then, 9 first half turnovers, 9 first half penalties, a couple of turnovers. I don't think that there's too much concern for Jacksonville, even though they got whopped in that ballgame. Cohen, quote, we just have to keep building. It doesn't seem like there's urgency for the Jags. It doesn't seem like Cohen cares about winning in August.
All right, Teddy, Battle of New York coming up here. But first, shout out to the comment section. Nearly 1,000 of you watching live. We appreciate it. We're talking NFL preseason week 3, and we got 1,000 of you live. We greatly appreciate that. Hit that like button and subscribe. But Have Cash saying, hey, probably going to join the little pick 5 contest that's going on for Splash Sports. Well, Have, let me tell you, you should join in with what we're doing, this Survivor contest over with Splash Sports. When you sign up, you can use code WagerTalk and you get a $100 bonus. That $100 bonus, Have, can be used towards that WagerTalk pick 5. So you like these contests? No proxy. Don't have to go to Vegas for doing your pick 5. Don't have to go to Vegas. Don't have to hit up a proxy, say, hey, I need to get my picks in. And then they're stuck in traffic and you're all stressed, Teddy.
You don't have to tip the proxy when you win.
Yeah.
That's a good point. We love the proxies, but you got to pay them.
Yeah, and that's everyone talks about, rake this, rake that. Yeah, think about going there, getting a hotel, getting the proxy service, all that good stuff. Folks, none of it. All you have to do is be in a state where Splash is legal. It's across multiple different states. If you're like me in Pennsylvania, what I did, Teddy, I just drove right over the bridge over Philly, went into New Jersey, signed up. I can still make my picks in PA. So as long as you sign up in a state, you can do them anywhere, folks. This is the most accessible Survivor pool that I've ever seen, and we're talking about a $21 million prize. Use code WagerTalk. You get a $100 bonus. Teddy's in it. I'm in it. Andy Lang, Kelly in Vegas, Steve Merrill, all your favorite Wager Talkers. Let's put our money where our mouth is. Pro Football Survivor coming your way for $21 million. And if you want to join that pick 5 like Have, info over at wagertalk.com on our live odds page, or just head on over to splashsports.com. You'll see it on the landing page there. So that's what we got going on these contests, Teddy. NFL season right around the corner. 2 weeks from now, Teddy, we're doing a proper opening line report. So folks, early bird pricing, it's going away because now is the time to hop in, right, Teddy?
Sure. So let's be real. 2 weeks from now, we'll talk about week 1. But the first real opening line report comes week 2 because the week 1 numbers have been up there also. But that being said, you know how it is. Every Monday, we'll be here all season long, right through the Super Bowl, right through the week after the Super Bowl. Accountability and strong information every week. If you like my style of handicapping, if you want to get on board for this football season, look, it's $5.99 for the full season. That's going to get you everything in the preseason, still the regular season, every play, every day, all 5 percent included. It's going to give you all the playoffs, it's going to give you the Super Bowl, it's going to give you the prop report. There is nothing more to buy. Use promo code Teddy50. Get $50 off the NFL full season package. Again, $5.99. Get it for $5.49. Promo code Teddy50. WT.buzz/TC.
And folks, that is every single NFL play, every single write-up all the way through the Super Bowl. So if you like Teddy, this is the time to hop on board, folks. You're not going to get a better price than that right here, right now. Code Teddy50, WT.buzz/TC is the quickest way to get to his page. All right, Teddy, Battle of New York, baby. Here's the thing is on Wager Talk today, you join us every single Friday. More reasons to subscribe, folks. Friday is a terrific show. Marco D'Angelo, Teddy covers Yanni the Greek. You can't do better than that. You told people, let's pump the brakes a little bit here on the Steelers, folks. If I'm betting this game, I'm actually looking towards the Jets side. They shut them out. 17-0. Jets get the win. The Giants also perform very well. You mentioned that when you were breaking down Miami. 26-3 was the final in that one. How does the Battle of New York shake out here, Teddy?
Yeah, Jets off 17-0 win over the Steelers. It was Geno, and then Kate Klubnik and Bailey Zappi came in, and Zappi wasn't good again. Brady Cook. Geno's quote after the game, it felt good to be out there with the guys. Obviously, we got one drive in, but we scored a touchdown. You always want to start fast, and that was a good thing. Definitely a lot of room for improvement. That being said, they got just 62 yards on the ground, and 16 of them came on a scramble from Kate Klubnik. Aaron Glenn was worried about that. Quote, I know the Steelers pride themselves on stopping the run, but that's not a pass for us. We got to get better in that aspect, and we will. And, of course, the Jets' defense, guess what? 2 interceptions last week, which is something that has been a problem for the Jets' defense. They became the first NFL team since 1933 when they started tracking interceptions to go a full season without a single INT last year. As for the Giants, they beat Miami 26-3. And, boy, they were the better team in the joint practices. They were the better team in the preseason game. It really wasn't that close. Jameis Winston, 150 yards and a touchdown in the first half. And then it was backups versus backups, and the Giants' backups outgained Miami's backups 390-102. Jameis, Brandon Allen, Jake Haener, Jackson Dart was in some pregame drills but didn't play. Don't know yet. Haven't heard anything for starters for either team, but the markets seem to think that the Giants more likely to get Jackson Dart some work than the Jets getting Geno Smith work here. Smith work this past weekend.
All right, Teddy, game that I will have boots on the ground for here. We got the Eagles taking on the Bengals. I'll be making the trip down to the link and probably seeing none of the Eagles starters play if Nick Sirianni has it his way. At 2.5, though, we're seeing Philadelphia. Third time, Teddy, that Philadelphia is a favorite here in 3 preseason games. They haven't won or covered any of them. So now they're taking on the Bengals. How do you see this one breaking down?
Yeah, they're favored here because the market don't want Cincinnati. You know, we saw Andy Dalton start both preseason games for Philadelphia. That tells us that he's likely to, be the number 2 again this year, and he's ahead of Tanner McKee. And I think that's been the case. That being said, Dalton hasn't looked good here in the preseason. 3 of 10 for 44 yards against New England, 3 of 6 for 20 yards against Baltimore, and McKee had a couple of touchdown passes against the Pats and was more efficient overall. But again, when you have teams, we have quarterbacks playing in the first couple of series against the better defenses than they're facing later. You tried not to overreact to the fact that Andy Dalton hasn't looked great so far this season compared to Tanner McKee, even though it looks like Dalton is in line for the number 2 job in Philadelphia. As for Cincinnati, so the Bengals are 2-0 in the preseason. This is the first time since Zach Taylor was hired in 2019 that they've actually won 2 preseason games. They never won 3. It was Josh Johnson and Sean Clifford combining for 282 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Zach Taylor's quote, "Josh, I thought played excellent, finished with a nice touchdown drive at halftime. I probably would have played him into the third quarter, but I thought he played real clean, and I got Sean Clifford in there in the second half. Would not be surprised. I don't think we're going to see a lot of starters from Cincy, but I would not be surprised at all if we see a little bit more from Sean Clifford here compared to Johnson, who played well last time and is a veteran."
Sean Clifford, Penn State great. I'm sure a lot of Eagles fans will be pumped to see a lot of Clifford in action, Teddy. All right, let's do New Orleans taking on Dallas. Joe Milton, I guess you could argue, has been the
No, you jumped ahead, my man.
Oh, yeah, that would help if we talked Seattle versus Kansas City. It's because Seattle's coming off of Sunday Night Football. They lost by 3 points last night to the Titans. So they're taking on Kansas City here. We're seeing Kansas City 1.5, and we got 36.5 here, Teddy. How are you breaking down this one?
Yeah, I mean, the Seabags look good early. Drew Lock, a great first half, great first quarter. Not so much after halftime. Jalen Milroe threw a couple of picks, no points, rough second half. There were no starters in that ballgame. In Seattle, it's worth noting, Seattle's backups beat Tennessee's starters in the first half of that game. That being said, they had 14 penalties for 100 and something yards, and there were 3 turnovers, didn't force any. It was not a clean game, and they suffered a bunch of injuries as well. Mike McDonald afterwards, quote, "It was a successful week, but ultimately you want to be able to win these games. Definitely made an improvement from last week, so let's keep going." Didn't sound he was too worried that Seattle didn't play well down the stretch of that ballgame. As for Kansas City, Justin Fields, Garrett Nussmeier, Chris Oladokun combined for 35 pass attempts at Tampa Bay. Out of those 35 pass attempts, none of them gained more than, I think, 17 yards. It was all dinks and dunks. The pass rush was there on defense, a positive sign for KC. But it's, Butker missed the game-winning field goal. They still covered the number. But you talk about coaches that do not care in August. Andy Reid at or near the top of that list. That being said, I'm not sure Mike McDonald cares that much either about the wins and the losses.
All right, now we get to talk about the Saints taking on the Cowboys. And if the Saints score 1 touchdown, Teddy, they've done better than they did in the previous week here in the NFL preseason. The Spencer Rattler experiment, I think, is starting to come to a resounding end here. They're taking on Dallas. Dallas, 3.5-point favorites in this one at home, 37.5, Teddy.
I mean, the Saints didn't play their starters either the first 2 weeks at all. I'm not convinced we're going to see a whole lot of them here. They lost 34-0, but the Rams didn't play starters either. So backups versus backups, the Saints, the depth isn't there. It's Zach Wilson, then Spencer Rattler. They finished -3 in turnovers, had a dozen penalties. And Wilson looked like the better QB in general. But then this time it was flipped. Rattler played first half for Wilson. Second half, Rattler threw a pick 6. Wilson threw an interception and completed only half his passes. His quote, "It was ugly, but I think a good opportunity to see how guys respond. I was fine, especially for a preseason game. I thought I got better in certain aspects. Thought my understanding of the offense and what we're trying to do has grown." Rattler said, quote, "I felt good out there other than the one play. Obviously, we didn't score any points, so we got to be better. Kellen Moore, quote, I feel really good about both these guys. I thought they had both really, really good camps overall. So, yeah, they struggled against the Rams, and the coach and staff doesn't seem to be too worried about that. As for Dallas, the Joe Milton experience, Joe Milton's been pretty good. Milton used to make me crazy in the preseason, and he was good again. I think he won the backup QB job. 2 games, 21-28, 286 yards. It's not like Sam Howell's been bad, but Milton's been bet on. We'll see what the rotations are for Dallas. They're not a team that tends to care a lot about these August contests, but clearly the market is saying the Saints care even less.
All right, Teddy, 2 more games here on Friday. We'll wrap things up with the Saturday 2 games as well. So let's talk Arizona and Green Bay. Another thing, folks, that Teddy mentioned on WagerTalk today, all you got to do is bet the Broncos in the preseason. Just bet they blow out everyone. And Teddy said, pump the brakes here a little bit. This line's gotten a little out inflated. Line didn't matter, Teddy. They beat Denver by 3 touchdowns. Now they take on the Vikings. Expect to see a little bit more of J.J. McCarthy in that game as well. Teddy, we're seeing 1.5 for Arizona as they're taking on Green Bay. How are you breaking down this one?
Sure. So Arizona, Green Bay, and then Minnesota, Denver.
Yes. Sorry.
Yes. Okay. So let's talk Arizona. So for the I have nothing for the Packers. I didn't get a good quote. I didn't get a good sense of what the thoughts were after that. There was like sometimes when there's no info, I'm not trying to blow smoke up anyone. I'm going to make stuff up. With Jordan Love, Tyrod Taylor, Kyle McCord, that's a bet-on trio. Obviously, when you beat Denver by 3 touchdowns in the preseason, you're doing something right. There was a lot to like about Green Bay this past week. I'm not convinced we're going to see anyone. Again, the starters played last week. I'm not convinced we're going to see any of them this week for Green Bay. As for the Cardinals, Gardner Minshew stayed in for the first drive of the second half. No touchdown before halftime. Then Keaton Slovis also had no scoring drives. But they didn't play a whole lot of starters. Mike LaFleur, after Arizona played well in the first couple of games, certainly offensively they played well in the first couple of games. The preseason, remember they played in the Hall of Fame game. Quote, LaFleur, it was the culmination of our week. We had a sloppy week of practice. I don't think we practiced really well over the last week since Vegas. There have been individuals who have practiced well. There have been times we've done good things, but overall it wasn't good enough. Rookie coach, quote like that. Arizona's probably a bet-on team here. The markets are saying that, with the Cardinals being favored in this one. And I'm not going to emergency betting alert anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if Arizona takes some money.
If there were to be an EBA, it would be in that game, but alas, there is not. You'll have to stay tuned to see if we have any for you. I know there isn't one in this one, Teddy, because according to my odds logic screen, Vikings and Broncos, there is no line. But as far as the matchup, what we've seen in these teams as we head into the third week of the preseason, what are you thinking? And if you made a line, Teddy, would this be just one of those 1.5ers for you? What do you think?
No, Denver has to be favored by more. And we have to see what Minnesota's going to do quarterback rotation-wise. Because J.J. McCarthy got hit hard. He had played 18 snaps over 4 series. He missed an open receiver in the end zone that everyone's whining about. And McCarthy got beat up during the ballgame. He took 3 QB hits. He got sacked. The quote from O'Connell after the game, maybe one more drive would have been great to get him based on where he was at snap count wise. But once he was a little hobbled there, I'm sure I'll have an update, but he seemed to be fine. McCarthy has been the number 2 QB behind Murray, ahead of Wentz and Brosma. I'm not sure who's going to play this week, and either do the markets. But again, that's not a bad QB rotation. McCarthy, of course, has taken all the second-team snaps and not Wentz in the last week or two since Murray got named as the starter. As for Denver, they were bet on in every preseason game prior to last week. Last week, not so pretty. And, of course, the starters went. Bo Nix, Jarrett Stidham, Sam Ehlinger. Nix's quote, it felt great. Just like any typical year, going out for the first drive, there's going to be some different things you can grow from. But I felt for the first drive of the season, it was solid. The strongest motion when I got out there was like riding a bike. Nothing really changed. They had won 8 in a row in the preseason. They did not win this one or come close. Sean Payton after the game, quote, I can't think of one area where we outplayed them. There might be some urgency here in that regard for Denver. And if Payton's interested in the preseason, that might well be a bet-on team. I think the markets are trying to assess. The books aren't sure what's going on with the rotations here, but Denver's coming the favorite, and they might come a bigger favorite than we think.
Yeah, not sure what state that he's in, but shout out to the live comments section. Jim saying he sees a 4.5 over at that blue book is what he's seeing for Denver. So as you said, Teddy, that's fallen in line with what you were kind of thinking.
Oh, yeah.
So we are seeing 4.5 is what you're seeing too?
Yes, I'm seeing 4.5, 39.5. We got a Bet Rivers number. We got a couple of we got a Fanatics number. We got a couple of we got a Polymarket number. We got a couple of numbers in the global markets as well.
And this coming from Iowa was where Jim. So thanks for tuning in from Iowa, buddy. Hit that like button while we're hanging out. Want to remind you guys on next week's show, full mailbag edition. We'll talk, some divisions, some thoughts on teams. But if you have any questions that you want to ask a guy who has been prepping for NFL since basically the last NFL season ended, you can drop them here in the comments section or tune in live next week, 11 a.m. Eastern, and drop them in the live chat. A lot of mailbag edition of the opening line report as we head towards the start of the NFL season. All right, Teddy, 2 games left here. Did anybody tell Indianapolis that they were playing in a preseason game last week? Because after the first quarter, it didn't seem like they were they were all that interested in finishing out that game. They're 1.5-point favorites, 36.5 as they're taking on Detroit, 1 p.m. on Saturday, Teddy.
Yeah, I thought Indy was bet on, and I couldn't have been more wrong in that sense. They were no-show. They had 9 first downs. They went 1 for 11 on third down. They got outgained 461 versus 164 against a Falcons team that had issues. And they didn't turn the ball over. So you can't even say, it was all turnovers. Riley Leonard battling for the backup quarterback job under QB whisperer Shane Steichen, and he's looked awful the first 2 games. He's done nothing to win the backup quarterback job. Anthony Richardson had 3.7 yards per pass attempt, 3 of 9 passing. His longest rush was 7 yards. He was sacked twice. That was a cut me. I want to be a free agent performance, not I want to be the backup quarterback on this team performance. Going up against the backup defense. Steichen talking about the competition for Danny Dimes' backup job. Quote, it's still ongoing. We've got a lot of belief. We got a lot of belief and faith in both these guys, so we'll keep that going. Wasn't pretty for Indy. Maybe there's more urgency for the Colts. There's surely more urgency for the Colts than the Lions. The Lions didn't play starters again. They beat Washington, but it wasn't pretty at all. They had Josh Dobbs, who gave up a sack, fumble, touchdown, led, I think, 1 touchdown drive. Luke Altmaier played most of the second half, 9 of 13 for 86 yards. It was an okay showing. Campbell's not a coach. I think he's all that worried about wins and losses. And anyone that Colts took money last week and burned their backers, I wouldn't be surprised to take money this week. There's more urgency, much more urgency for Indy after that showing than for Detroit.
Teddy, this next matchup, I know everyone is going to be excited for because it means it's the end of the NFL preseason. And the next game that we'll be talking, as you see in the odds screen, is New England and Seattle to start off the NFL true season. But first, we have to talk Chicago and Tennessee. Tennessee off the win last night. Teddy, how are you seeing the final game of the NFL preseason?
Yeah, Titans 2-0 in August. It was Cam Ward, Mitch Trubisky, Hendon Hooker, Will Levis all played. It was Tennessee starters versus Seattle backups, and Seattle led 16-3 after the first quarter. Tennessee won the game only because of 3 Seahawks turnovers. They got basically 3 field goals. They had a missed field goal the other side, 2 turnovers that we didn't get a first down and kicked field goals, and those were 9 points that they didn't deserve, and they got there. they got the money. They got the win. They did not get the money. They took a bunch of money early, though. That game did land in the middle. There weren't many. They got 2.5s. There were 2.5s out there very early in the week. Robert Saleh, quote, it's got to be better. Guys, I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. Tennessee looks pretty rough right now. As for the Bears, they played very well in week 1. Not as well this past weekend. Caleb Williams, Case Keenum, Miller Moss, 13-21, combined 13-21. Just 2 of 14 on third downs, 11 penalties. Caleb Williams, 2 of 5 for 28, and 3 red zone incompletions on that one drive where he played. So, again, when you talk about urgency for August, Chicago didn't necessarily play well in that contest. That doesn't necessarily mean that Ben Johnson and company is freaking out that they got to do better in week 3 of the preseason. Again, this number right now sitting 1.5, 37.5. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some over money, even though I'm not seeing that in the markets just yet. It feels to me like a couple teams with something to prove on the opposite side of the football. And when that happens, overs in August are not necessarily a rare thing.
Don't worry, folks. There are many more emergency betting alerts to come in the future here at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on Opening Line Report. Week 3 of the NFL preseason will be in the books the next time that we talk. Drop your comments on this video below or tune in live next week to have them answered by Teddy Covers. Teddy, one more time on the way out. No brainer, folks. If you like Teddy, you want to hop on board with Teddy, the offer to take advantage of, Teddy50. Use it over at his page, WT.buzz/TC, and tell them a little bit about what they can expect coming up this season, Teddy.
Sure, that's a great offer. I'm not going to tell anyone to not get on board with that. But, geez, you can get the rest of the year for $7.99 if you want every play every day in every sport. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff to go. So and this stuff is going to expire at the beginning of September, I believe. Everything expires on August 31st. So if you want to get on board, now's the time to do it. Get the rest of the year for $7.99. Get the NFL season $5.99 and take $50 off with promo code Teddy50. Check out my homepage, WT.buzz/TC, if you'd like to partner up this football season and expect to make money start to finish.
Heck yeah, WT.buzz/TC. That's how you get in. He's Teddy Covers. You can follow him at Teddy Covers. Over 1,100 of you watching, and almost 3/4 of those are coming from Teddy's Twitter. So hit that follow button while you're hanging out over there. We appreciate you. And then when you're done, head on over to the WagerTalk YouTube page as well.
Just real quick, follow me on Twitter at Teddy_Covers.
Yes. Don't forget that underscore. Don't forget that underscore. That is
That's how I got on Twitter to begin with.
Yeah.
Someone was posting under Teddy Covers, and I'm like, I better get my own Twitter. This was like 2009 or something. I'm like, I better get my own thing, or someone's going to be able to impersonate me forever. So,
well, Teddy_Covers. Hit that follow button. Absolutely. Well, Teddy, absolute pleasure, my man. We'll be back. Mailbag edition next week. So you can also tweet at Teddy. If I see any of those tweets, we'll have them ready to go for you here. We'll see you next time. Scan that. It'll take you right to wagertalk.com. Check it out, folks. And we'll see you next week on Opening Line Report.